It's Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.org.
The award-winning It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is It's Movie Time. And Mary, I know we are done with the Oscars. We're just done with it. But coming by recently is a film called The Salesman that won the Best Foreign Picture from the Oscars. Is it worth it?
I think it is. I definitely think it is. And I would not have seen this film had it not been for the Oscars and the notoriety that this received, not only for receiving the award, but the actions of the director to boycott the Academy Awards ceremony.
And let's get it out of the way. Ashghar Farhadi.
Thank God you said
it. is the director, and he was the director of another Oscar winner,
yes.
Separation.
Yes.
And just a very fine family drama. More of the same? Or, well, you didn't see.
I didn't see A Separation. I did read about it,
okay.
And I would say my expectations, having read about A Separation and what this film, The Salesman, delivered, was met in terms of how he is known for emphasizing that intimacy within families when events disrupt their lives and cause real challenges to their perceived values and held positions within the family. So it had a very intimate aspect to it, even though the premise for the film is actually promoted as a drama thriller. Because there is, the main storyline has an incident that is violent, although not shown implied violence. And really that's the inciting incident that upsets this family of a husband and a wife.
And very similarly in A Separation. And while I like to see that this is reflective of the Iranian domestic problems, I think as you and I were talking about it, everybody, no matter what the country, has this problem, and somewhere in some marriages there is a bit of a disconnect that begins to really hurt that marriage.
Right, it almost starts an unraveling, if you will, of how they viewed themselves as a couple.
Yeah.
In this case, it's Ahmad's the husband and Rana is the wife, and they are happy actors in, ironically, a production of Arthur Miller's The Death of the Salesman.
Sure, let's clear that too. It's a reference to Death of the Salesman,
yes.
which they are doing.
They are.
And not because he's a salesman, because he's a teacher.
He is.
And they're part-time thespians.
Yes.
In this, so it's pretty neat. And there are relevances to Willy Loman and Linda to Death of the Salesman, so it's a pretty cool conjunction.
It is. And I think it's interesting that the director chose, as I understand, he was actually looking for a play. His background himself, educational and professional, before he went into films, is actually as a thespian and as a stage producer. And he was looking for a play that could really be that parallel journey, if you will, between what's happening in their lives and what's happening on stage. And playing the role of Willie and Linda Loman, he discovered the Arthur Miller play as one of his third or fourth choices.
It's pretty neat, but it doesn't require that you do know Death of a Salesman, but it's helpful.
It's helpful. And I thought it was interesting, just that juxtaposition between the Iranian and Persian culture in which he was raised and this quintessential 20th century American play that's about the American dream.
That's right.
But in its own way, it's really another family drama.
Yes.
Very intimate about incidences that start to happen that unravel who they believe they are as a family, and I think that's reflected very much in The Salesman, the film.
Yeah, and Willie in Death of the Salesman is messed up, and
yes, he is.
and I think Ahmad is messed up, although he doesn't appear it. He appears to be pretty much in control. but the incident, which is an assault,
Yes.
and his wife is assaulted, and I'm thinking that here, and this is where the Iranian part of this comes in. It would appear that his masculinity comes into play.
Yes.
The honor.
The issue of honor and revenge.
Yes.
And how he chooses to pursue it. And I thought there was also a lot of other interesting aspects of the Iranian culture, because in subtle ways the director brings forth, just through one line that's not related necessarily to the main storyline of the assault and honor revenge, but there are references to censorship twice. During the production of The Salesman, someone comes in, I think it's a director-producer, and says there are 3 scenes that the censors have problems with.
Yes.
And he's a part-time teacher during the day,
Yes.
and in a classroom scene, someone from the school comes to the door and says they haven't approved of these books for him to have in his classroom.
Sure.
So he says, well, just throw them away. But there are other references, too, such as about the police. And why they aren't going to the police, and the issue of they won't do anything.
And because of the publicity from this,
exactly.
and the matter of honor, and as we look at his wife, and she really is the one who doesn't want him. I mean, she wants to stand back. Now, what's beautiful about this movie, it's sometimes so ambiguous. Why doesn't she want the police involved?
Yeah, and we can only surmise.
Yeah, right, because he doesn't tell us.
Well,
right?
And the other ambiguity is, and I thought it was a very wise choice, there's no actual showing of the assault.
Right.
There's the lead up to how it happened, and her potential responsibility, or just lack of thoroughness in their own home security, really.
Yes.
That she might be viewed as culpable.
Right.
For letting him in to their apartment.
And then, I love the way he shoots that. How the door just slowly opens. She opens the door, goes back in the shower because she believes her husband's coming up.
Right.
And that door slowly just kind of opens. And something's behind that. I love the way he directs this. It's such a tight environment.
It's in an apartment.
Yes.
And a very crowded apartment,
yes.
because they've just moved, and another reference, a subtle reference, if you will, to the state of things in Tehran and Iran, is they are forced to move out of their lovely, spacious apartment because
it's crumbling.
It's crumbling in one night. Windows are cracking, walls are cracking.
That's the only obvious metaphor in this whole thing. But it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
And they move into an apartment that's offered to them by one of their fellow actors, and not being told the full story of what was happening in that apartment before they got there. Hence, they're now at risk because of the previous tenant, and I think I won't give anything away by saying it becomes very clear that she was a promiscuous woman, and
probably a prostitute. But we won't use that word.
Right.
You don't use the word. You say she had many male friends
or clients,
or promiscuous, but you would never say. And this is that cultural fineness about this.
Right.
If you look at that as just as the scenes you're suggesting, and that you look at, there are differences. Here we'd say, she's a prostitute, no problem.
Right.
But there, you have to be reserved. Really.
Very reserved.
Yeah.
And even very reserved, and I think actually tasteful, and I think American directors could probably learn a little bit about not actually having to show the violence. And that was one of the things that's actually left ambiguous between the husband and the wife, is to what extent was she assaulted, because they don't show it. There's a reference to that she fought back and sustained a head injury as a result of it. She doesn't want to say how, the wife doesn't, Rana, want to say the extent of the assault, but it's clear she doesn't want to talk about it, either to her husband or to her neighbors. And going back to your original question, I think that's part of the culture, is how would she be viewed? Not only the culpability of having opened the door, but she's now been violated,
tainted,
potentially
yes.
tainted as a
Yes,
woman.
yes.
And does that impact her relationship with her husband? Does it impact her relationship with her neighbors, her fellow actors? She's dealing with a lot of cultural baggage as it relates to something that really, in our view, wouldn't be her fault.
Well, they're both intellectuals. They're both involved in the arts. And she's a really smart, lovely woman.
Mm-hmm.
She has no job. But that would be typical of that culture.
Yes.
Now, it's not that she doesn't stay busy, but it is a part of that. And as you're talking about, the way she's perceived if this becomes public, very difficult. As we look toward the end, and Mary, you and I struggle with this about ending, and we're not giving away the ending, but let me tell you, I think the business with the perpetrator is so finely done, so again ambiguous, and so different from what I had expected. Did you have that same feeling?
I did, only because partly because of my own influence from the media in terms of hearing so much about honor and revenge attacks and killings. And oftentimes it's by the family. This is just one man.
Yes.
The husband.
Yes.
And he is really put at a crossroads with regards to that cultural pull and just pure love for his wife. It's very
Yes.
obvious that they love each other.
Yes.
And he wants her to not be suffering knowing that this evil
Sure.
person is out
Yes.
there. And he's really put at a moral crossroads and cultural crossroads as to how he responds to having discovered the perpetrator and what he's going to do about it.
And that's one of the things I love about this movie. Nothing is too obvious.
Not at all.
And you have to pick and choose your pieces of information, and we still don't have it all. But heck, it's even like, how much does he know his wife?
True.
How much do you ever really know your spouse? Well, you do, but we've always questioned how much we know somebody we're so deeply involved with and in love with. And I think this does it. It does the job.
It does. And, I think even he was perplexed because kind of like, this is such a light analogy compared to the seriousness of the subject and the relationship, but when he discovers who the perpetrator is and brings that forth to his wife, it's almost like a cat bringing its owner the offering of the mouse. And
No,
the
that's
cat
nice.
The cat expecting you to be really satisfied and happy with this dead mouse. And, her response, I think, really isn't what he expects. And that causes even more ambiguity as to how they go forward.
Oh, yes.
From that.
And the perp, as they would call him,
Yes.
is a delight to me of unexpected. The
Very
perpetrator,
unexpected.
I just did not, and it throws you off center, as it throws the husband off center, and she remains somewhat inscrutable about it all. Anyway, Mary Yerina, this is the Oscar winner for Best Foreign Picture. It's called The Salesman, but you have to apply a grade here.
Well, and I am happy to apply a grade A because it really tells and weaves a wonderful story, and then has this great subtext of the intimacy of the relationship and the ambiguous nature of life.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Not only in their relationship and how they go forward, but the mystery or the thriller aspect of it itself. There's a lot of ambiguity to it, and my friends who I saw the film with, we were talking about it afterwards, and I think it's because of that ambiguous nature of it that you're just like, no, I thought this, or yeah, I had this opinion about that scene. So it was a wonderful film-going experience.
I hope you have inferred from my discussion that I, of course, also would apply an A. But, let me give kudos to the Academy for choosing this, because there were a couple of my favorite films competing, A Man Called Ove and Tony Erdmann. Two very fine movies, either one of which could have won the Oscar. But this one, for its humanity, for its fine acting and fine directing. It's The Salesman. I think it's still at our sponsors at
think it
Gateway
is.
Film Center.
Yes,
So rush out there, everybody. It's a winner.
highly recommend it.